So this video is going to go over the steering column linkage using a couple of U-joints and a uh, double D. One of the things I had to do is make sure the orientation of the steering wheel was right compared to where I wanted it. The other thing I had to make sure was there was no binding or any place. And what I did was down on the bottom I have, I don't know if you can see it, but it's right there. That is a universal joint with a dampener in it, vibration dampener. So I put that down there, and I put it down by the rack and pinion. Up here was is a 1 inch to a 3/4 inch double D. Now I'm going to go over how I measured it and what I did. I had it in, I took it out so I can show you how I measured. And I'm going to pause so I can. Okay, so what I did, I took this out of the car so I can show you how I measured it. It's pretty hard measuring it in the car, and I'm going to show you what I did and how it came out. So I bought a piece of this 3/4 inch double D, and I have it zinc plated, so gives it a little shininess, but it protects it. It won't rust, and I don't have to paint it. Couple of things. With the double Ds, there's no way to get the orientation wrong, but you want to make sure the swivels are in the same direction when you put them in, the universals. So what I did, let's just say this is in the car, truck, wherever you're putting it in. This side was connected to the steering column, and this guy here was connected to the rack and pinion. Now, a few things. With these, there's a 1/4 inch, 3/4, sorry, 3/4 of an inch where this is going to go inside the universal. So this spot here, from this flat to this, is 3/4 of an inch, and I actually marked it and measured it. So it's 3/4 of an inch when you put it inside. But when you go in and measure these, you're going to try and figure out how do you measure them. And there's actually, on these universals, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a spot where the double D ends, and you don't want it to get any further because it's going to get in the way of the movement of your universal, right? And it's going to bind and hit and crunch. So the max you put it is right at this flush spot right here, right there. Hopefully you can see that. And so the good thing about that, when you put it all together, and you go to measure, and you want to figure out what your length is, you can measure from flat to flat. And with this, if I measure it, gives me 11.5 inches, and that's what I cut this down to. Actually, the piece I bought was 23 inches, so I just cut it exactly in half, and it worked. Now, with these, and you'll have to check with your universals, I could have just went from inside to inside and added 3/4 of an inch on each side because it's got to go in 3/4 of an inch. So 10 inches plus the 1.5, because 3/4 and 3/4, 1.5, gives you your 11.5 inches. So both ways work, either from inside to inside or outside to outside on the flanges, right? Now what you can do is you can cut it a 1/4 inch longer because you can always grind. You don't want to add, you take out your welder, and that ain't going to work. The other thing that you do is, once you get it in there, you tighten it up, and you're gonna leave some marks from your set screws. They're gonna leave a mark on your metal. It's actually gonna look something like this. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little mark, and it tells me where the set screw hit into the metal. Now, with mine, I took a 3/8 drill bit and made a dimple and another dimple. What that did was when I set the set screw, it's going to lock in there and it ain't going to move out. The other thing I did on the 1 inch, because I got this longer set screw, I don't know if you can see it, kind of take it out, but it's real long. Because on the 1 inch, it's hollow. I drilled a hole where the set screw was, so this will go all the way inside. And it'll lock on the column so it ain't coming out. You want to make sure, you hit bumps, these loosen up for some reason. You don't want them falling out, and that's why the manufacturer states you should create these dimples to lock in. So when these are together, and I'm not going to put this guy's a little tight. I'm not going to put him on there right now, but I'm just going to show you. Make sure the orientation, some people use the round 3/4 inch that's weldable. Make sure you read the manufacturer on the orientation. If you notice, this one and this one are in the exact same orientation. And these two are in the same. They wobble this way. With the welding, you can get these 180 degrees, 60 degrees, any amount of degrees off. And when these turn, you really want, at least in my application, hopefully in your application, you want them exactly like this. Now, if you're using double D's, it's only going to go one way. It's only when you do the weld-ins that you've really got to be concerned about it. So that's how I measured. I did it inside the vehicle. This guy was mounted, the other one was mounted. I measured twice. One from inside to inside, and I added 1.5 inches, and then one from the outside edges of the flats where the bar shouldn't go any further. And when I did that, they both came out exactly the same, and it worked out. It's not really hard. If you're really concerned, add an extra 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. If you think you can't get it right and you're not going to get it really close, side on a larger measurement, because you could always grind it down later and not have to buy another piece of stock. Now, if you're going to buy these high dollar ones, that are chrome, polished, and everything else, you can go buy a cheap double D, just solid steel. They're super cheap. You can cut that one up and then use that as a template for your high dollar piece that's either going to be stainless or whatever coating you want on it. So that's it. First thing I did, made sure my seat was where I wanted, make sure my column was where I wanted it. You don't want to do this and then later on decide my column's not where I want. So make sure your column's where you want it, your seat's where you want it, everything is exactly where you want it. Put your universals on there. Now this is not it, this was the one I purchased earlier, but then I went to a dampening type of universal joint. Reason being, it takes the vibrations from the road and does not transfer it up to your steering wheel. And all it is, it's one of these, except one of the universals have a rubber insert that takes the vibrations. And I put that on the rack, figuring if the rack's making a vibration, I was going to end it there before it went up. So I did it at the rack, and the rack had a 3/8 36 spline because it was a Mustang style rack and pinion. But it's not hard. Measure on the side of longer. You can grind it away. Don't forget to put your dimples in to lock in the lock nuts. Don't just tighten it down. Drill the 3/8 hole or whatever it says to do. It should tell you. If you're on the 1-inch double D on mine, it wanted, because it gave me a longer set screw, it's hollow, it wanted a hole put it in there. And on these, it just wanted dimples. Hope that helps. I doing this because I could not find a lot of information on how to measure these and how to cut these. So what I try to do is, if I can't find anything on YouTube, I try to make a video. So if you got questions, ask. So I went ahead and measured from the end of the knuckle right here, right where it ends on this side, to the other side, and came out to 11.5 inches. Because if you measure from the knuckles right here, right at that edge, and this is with a flat, you know, that's where, if the knuckle moves, the inside piece swivels in there. So you can see I can put that in there, but it's right at that edge, same as the other side. So you measure from this point here, not the bottom, but here. If you can only measure in between, just remember you got 3/4 of an inch that will fit inside this part of the U-joint. So if you only get the outside to outside, you add 3/4 of an inch on this side, 3/4 of an inch on the other side. And if you want to be safe, add another 1/4 inch that you can grind off or cut off later. And I found out, no matter how I measured it, if I measured it from this piece here, which is the bottom of the U-joint, to which would be the top of the U-joint, that is down here, if you can see it right there. If you measured from the top of that one to the bottom of this one here, it came out to, yeah, 10 inches, because you added 3/4 and 3/4, it came out to 11.5. And if you measured from here to there, it came out to 11.5. So either way works. It was 10 inches from the top of the U-joint down there to the bottom of this U-joint. Yeah, 3/4 and 3/4 came out to 11.5. And I measured from the top of the knuckle here to the bottom, you know, to the same one on that side, and it came out to 11.5. So both worked. And just remember that inside the knuckle, at least with these knuckles, this is a 3/4 DD, double D, and this is a 1 inch double D up here. Down there, I think it was a 3/4 36 spline. If I got that wrong, I'll fix it. I'll put a note on the video. And this is a 3/4 double D.